welcome to the channel. Welcome to the Foot and Nose podcast. Please like, hype, subscribe, and all the things that podcasters like to ask of supporters to do. My God, just watched Arsenal, Brentford. Brentford were the home team, so I guess Brentford Arsenal. And what a game for Brentford. What a game for the Premier League. What a game for the narrative merchants that are Sky Sports, Talk Sport, and I guess everyone who creates content who's looking for a bit of drama and a bit of story to tell because Brentford gave everybody just that. I don't think they're in it for that. I think Brentford have been doing quite well for some time, and I've been talking about them along the season and praising Keith Andrews and Mehmet Ali, his assistant, and the entire coaching team at Brentford. They've been incredible with their application, their execution, their planning. They're so meticulous, and they play decent, fast football. I think Brentford is the team a lot of people think Manchester United are against since Michael Carrick came. I think Brentford just gave Arsenal a 1-1 battering, the likes of which I think Chelsea thought they had given us when Arsenal drew 1-1 at Stamford Bridge, with Caicedo getting a red card in that first half. The game didn't start well for Arsenal. Um, it started with changes at the back, Saliba out, but Mosquera was not a problem in this game. He had a good game. He had one moment late in the game where he gets beaten by Thiago, um, but then he makes a recovery within the same play to block a shot on goal that Thiago tries to put away. So Mosquera was one of the better players in the day. I think the defense was okay, even though it was under pressure. It was under a lot of pressure. Incapia came on for Calafiori, who had made a return in the weekend game against Sunderland. Another very physical game. And Arsenal made changes for Saliba and Calafiori. All right. Ben White was on the bench. He hasn't played the last couple games. Not really. If he came on against Sunderland, I might be forgetting. It was as a sub, but I don't think he did. Then in the midfield, you get Eze coming into the advanced number 10 for Kai Havertz. And Eze was anonymous in the game. I was chatting to some of my Arsenal fans like that I'm in a chat with here. Yeah. And I was like, I hope this is the day we find Eze. It wasn't to be. He had a hard day. Noni Madueke had himself a hard day too. And the goal will make it look better for him. And I'm glad he got the goal. But he was having a hard day, especially in that first half. Gyökeres, yeah. The front six positions in the Arsenal team, you could have put anyone in those positions. Declan Rice defensively was enormous. He had a good defensive game. On the ball, he's a bit safe, and he won't give you too much risk taking. He won't give you incisive passing. He won't give you. Declan Rice is what he is. Like he's big engine, good tackles, and keep the ball moving, keep ticking. Passing at a 94% pass completion rate most of the times, but he won't open teams up, and he played in a Declan Rice game today. So I'm not gonna go on him. Zubimendi could have been used as a sub, he wasn't bad, but those of you who've listened to me talk about Arsenal and the usage of players, I think we have a problem with not using enough players. I see Pep Guardiola changing his midfield a lot, playing O'Reilly in midfield, playing sometimes Rico Lewis in midfield. Not a lot this season, but Rico Lewis sometimes in midfield. Nico Gonzalez, changing things around with Bernardo Silva in there, and just keep changing things around, and Phil Foden sometimes, and I worry about how we have players who are being asked to do big physical shifts before they can even begin to put on a footballing show. And that's the problem that Arsenal is going to have to sit with in most of these games. Like, if you keep using the majority of the same players, you're going to struggle to win the physical battle every game, especially when you're playing against teams who have less games than you. You have athletes now across the Premier League, guys, like Igor Thiago, Dango Ouattara, this kid, Lewis Potter, who scored the goal. And they didn't even have Kevin Schade, because he's on a red card. Brentford, they didn't have Schade, and they gave Arsenal the business. So I don't want to talk about Arsenal being bad today, because I don't think they were bad. I think they were outplayed. I think they were out physical. I think they were playing against a team who had more zip and more purpose in the way they were passing the ball and moving forward together. I think Brentford, for most of this game, had actually, like, they were shading the possession in the first half. They had three big chances versus Arsenal's, I think, one or two. Martinelli is the one of the two big chances Arsenal has, and he fluffs his lines. Can't make. I mean, the keeper makes a good save, but Martinelli should be doing better there, especially when you're living off of scraps like Arsenal were in this game. But the midfield was nowhere until Martin Odegaard came on in halftime. And then after 70 minutes, when he gets hurt during that goal, Brentford do score to equalize. Then Odegaard again kind of dips. But I think he was playing there carrying a bit of a knock. I hope he's fine moving forward, because Arsenal players keep, now again, it seems like we're starting a new cycle of injuries. Saka comes on for Noni. He does okay. But Noni, besides scoring the goal, didn't do too much, so he couldn't be really upset about being taken off. Leandro Trossard, who left the other game in the weekend with cramps, plays really okay. He was one of the better players, him and Nkapie, in that first half for Arsenal. But he, you can't, like, put in a physical shift every 3 days. Like, I think Arteta has to find a way to trust Mars Lewis Skelly, to trust Ben White a bit more, to trust Christian Norgard, to use players who just keep staying on the bench without being used in this Arsenal squad. There's too many of them, in my opinion, at the moment. Players who are well to be on the match day squad, but they don't play. Today, Jesus has been getting games, but he didn't play today. And the unused subs today were, again, Ben White, Christian Norgard, who came on the 89th minute for Trossard in the last game. And then, so Gabriel Jesus, who played in the last game, Christian Norgard, and Miles Lewis Kelly. And then Ben White. It's really just, I don't understand the apprehension to use good level Premier League players against teams like Brentford. This is me not disrespecting Brentford. I think using a tired or kind of wearing out Declan Rice and Zubimendi pivot this much, even though they're better football players, you are then diminishing their physical capacity. They can't do this. And I love both of these players, and this is not their fault today that Arsenal didn't win. I'm not here talking about Arsenal didn't win because Declan Rice did this or Martin Zubimendi did that. I do think, though, if you are going to lean into the same changes and lean into the same, like, midfield pairing, you can't play these guys. There's no games that are not important moving forward. There aren't any. The FA Cup game, you're gonna use that to roll your substitutions. But after that, every game that's on the table right now is an important game. Zubimendi and Declan Rice will play a part because now we have some injuries in in the team. They'll play a part in the FA Cup game, and then they'll play against Wolves, and then they'll play in the North London derby. That's just, you're asking for trouble, in my opinion. And I love Mikel Arteta as a coach. I think today the other coach had the better of him, and that's fine. It doesn't happen a lot. It can happen that the other team can have a better day than you. This day is, for me, I hope people tell the story of Brentford more than they tell the story of Arsenal. However, as an Arsenal fan, I can see where some of the challenges are coming from. Declan Rice and Martin Zubimendi are playing a lot of football. And people, I can hear people in comments or responses to this saying, well, they get paid a lot, they get paid a lot of money. You can't trust Lewis Skelly, he's young, or this guy, Norgard is not levels. You kind of have to find a way. You have to find a way to not have to use these guys as much as we're using them. Otherwise, you lose the advantage of their superiority against some of these other players. Because athletically, a lot of players can match them when they are not in their tip-top condition. Especially Zubimendi. He's not an Iron Man. He's coming from La Liga, and now he's playing a lot of games, and he's scored a couple of goals in the previous two games, but also in the Manchester United game, he was showing signs of like, hey, dude needs help. So it's a tough one. I sympathize with the coaching staff, but I think they need to be more bold in their selections. They need to be more bold in their selections. We're rolling players out who are getting a lot of minutes in their legs, and that's the only thing I can think of when I see Brentford being the first to the ball as much as they were today, and they were out dueling. It felt and looked like that way to me anyway. Um, their Arsenal counterparts, and they were early on the press. They were good in putting pressure on us. They were physical. They were grabbing jerseys. They were in our faces, similar to Sunderland. And if I'm being honest, I like it. I like that they did that, because it would have been another game we played against a low block, and we would have had excuses for saying, oh yeah, it's hard to play against a low block. That's not what Brentford did. They man marked us all around the pitch, and they were in our faces, and they were just up for it. And you know what? It was a good old English London derby, and I don't want to hear any excuses about this player being injured or that player being whatever. They didn't have Kevin Schade, and they don't even have half the budget that Arsenal has. Brentford played a really good game of football, and they handed the league leaders, Arsenal Football Club, a 1-1 battering. This was a 1-1 hammering. Arsenal were lucky to get out of there with a point. David Raya was blowing at the end of the game. He was on the floor. That's how pushed they were. Damsgaard almost gets another goal. There were a couple of chances. Declan Rice intervenes. Damsgaard almost gets a tap inside our penalty area. And then there's another shot by Igor Thiago that goes wide. He shoots from like a kind of like a tightish angle, not too tight of an angle, just outside the 6-yard box, and he goes, skies it, because he went for power. Arsenal didn't have a lot of chances in this game. Like, Brentford limited Arsenal to very little chances while being brave, while stepping up to Arsenal and challenging. And I'm not gonna sit up here and make this about Arsenal were bad, Mikel Arteta this, Mikel Arteta that. This was Brentford showing the world of football, the world of Premier League football, how smart an operation they are, how good they are, and what they in their belief, in their system, in their structure. We have to give them credit, guys. This is, to me, a win for Brentford. I know it's 1-1, and Arsenal fans are gonna be, you know, pooping themselves about Manchester City gaining 2 points and now the lead is down to 4. That's real. The league at the top is down to 4, and City looked very swaggerish and on it yesterday at home to Fulham. So Manchester City handled business and they looked great. They were again they got a favorable whistle, right? Phil Foden should have seen red, but the score was already 3-0. So I don't think that would have changed the game much. They got a favorable whistle at Anfield when the game was still 0-0 there. Mark Gay prevents Mo Salah from going through and goal, and maybe that game goes differently. If City goes down to 10 men and they don't win there, but City are doing what they need to do. Arsenal have the tools they need to see this through. It before this game kicked off, it was 3 points, sure. Before this game week, I should say, it was 6 points with 13 games to go in the lead. Now the lead is 4 points, 12 games to go. Arsenal play again before Manchester City plays because they have to play against Wolves. Their game from week 31 has been pushed forward because of the Carabao Cup final. So they better handle business. They're traveling away to Wolves and then Tottenham Hotspur. So that's 3 away games in the Premier League in a row. And Tottenham Hotspur, they're going to be feeling it. They're going to probably be well rested because they will have not played since this Tuesday when Arsenal plays them. And Arsenal are playing on Thursday. So that's 2 days later than Tottenham, playing Sunday and then playing again next Wednesday. This is what I mean by use your players. You can't, I understand you want to play your best players all the time, but it doesn't mean they are going to be your best player every 3 days if you don't give them chances to not be exhausted. Like you can't be overusing these kids, man. Like I don't know if I'm the only one who sees it this way and feels this way. But for me, I think that's part of the big problem. It's been this way with Arteta for a long time. His issues for me are not always tactical. I think he more often than not, he gets the tactical edge over the opposing number. But his human resource management is leaves a lot to be desired, in my view. I don't think his problem is one of, he's not tactically astute. He's not, a clever sparring man when it comes to outwitting his opposite number. Today, he found it difficult to get going, and the players on the pitch found it difficult to get going. And what changes did we make? Changes that were due to health. Kai Havertz, a change was due to health, forced. Saliba, that's also a change that was due to health because he was not on the bench today. Both of those boys were not on the bench today. If they were available, they would have played. Nkapie, okay, there is a timeshare because Nkapie and Calafiori have been a bit, you know, struggling. They've been struggling a bit with health. Miles Lewis Skelly has played at the Bernabeu. He's played away to PSG in a semi-final of the Champions League and not embarrassed himself. How is he unusable in Premier League matches in 2025-26 this season? I'm sorry, like I'm not interested. I am not interested in hearing any excuses about why good players are not being used. No, they're not training well or whatever. Then don't put him on the bench. Leave him home and bring somebody else that you're prepared to use. That for me is the main thing for Arsenal. If Arsenal are going to win the Premier League this year or win anything big, it's going to take all of these players. Mikel speaks good game. He speaks a really good game about like using players, making them feel involved. But I'm sorry, he's falling short in involving players, like legit involving players. Not lip service, not do you play in these early stages of the Carabao Cup kind of thing. Now, those two legs against Chelsea, because we used our first team in that, it's starting to show now. Starting to show at Brentford. You see what I'm saying? It doesn't happen immediately. It's cumulative. You get away with not using your other players until you don't. At Leeds, how many minutes did Norgard get? How many minutes did Miles get? That game ended 4-0. Let me see. I think Arsenal has a problem with underusing players. I really do. At this point, I think Arsenal has a big problem with underusing players. Let me see. They won 3-0 against Sunderland. And the starting 11 was pretty much the same starting 11. I think for Leeds, except Calafiore. And maybe, yeah. So Gabriel Jesus starts, Leo, Madueke. The back four is the same, it's Calafiore. But I think with Leeds, it was Nkapie. But Declan Rice and Zubimendi played in that game against Sunderland, and then they played against Chelsea a full 90 minutes. Yep. Declan Rice, Martin Zubimendi, and Eze in the semi-final second leg against Chelsea. Madueke and Gyökeres with Martinelli up front. The back four in Capier, the rest Saliba, Gabriel, and Timber. Ben White unused again in these games. Unused. Yeah, Ben White's on the bench in the last two games. Unused with Chelsea, unused with Sunderland. We go a bit further back to Leeds. And game Arsenal won 4-0. And yes, it wasn't 4-0 like for most of the game, but it was 3-0 from the 69th minute. 3-0 from the 69th minute. Declan Rice and Zubimendi played 90 minutes. They played 90 minutes. I'm so you can't do this. And they playing 90 minutes or close to it every time, except that one time with Declan Rice had a bit of a cramp or something. And against Leeds, it was Trossard, Madueke, Gyökeres up front. But the back four, the same, changing only the left back again. But it was in Capier as it was in the next game against Chelsea. So I think the problem here is we're using changes in our squad, but in garbage time and in games that don't matter. And then when you're playing guys like Eze in from the cold, you play him in a game that matters, and then he does what he did today, and then you take him off at halftime. I'm not mad at him being pulled at halftime. However, I think you have to manage the human as well as the player. And so, how about you give Eze the minutes for Trossard? Play him out wide, or bring Trossard in and play Eze on the wing where he can do some stuff. Like, find a way to build the player, put him in a position where he can succeed. I don't think, and yes, the player has a lot to do with this as well. Like Eze has to figure out how he's going to integrate into this team, just like Gyökeres has been having to do the same. And as soon as Havertz is out of the team, it shows again in Gyökeres. And Calafiore is not in the team, it shows down that left-hand side, even though I must be fair to Nkapie and Trossard. Before Martin Odegaard came onto the pitch, Leo and Ricardo Calafiore, they were the best players for Arsenal in that first half. And this is a low bar because it was not a good first half for Arsenal. It was not a good 90 minutes for Arsenal because Brentford were that good on the day. So, in my opinion, whatever this midfield was doing today, there's nothing Mars Lewis Skelly could not have done that Declan Rice and or Zubimendi did today on the ball today. Yes, Declan Rice is Superman, and he had some very big interventions. But imagine if you started with, Norgard and Zubimendi, or Norgard with Rice, and then you can bring in one or the other because they've been playing 90 minutes every 3 days. Like, you can do that. You can do that. but you have to be prepared and and be brave enough to do it. And I'm sorry, Arsenal at the moment, I just you're using the same players too many times. Like, what good is that gonna do? You have to start doing the thing you're saying you want to do, keeping everybody involved. Then involve them. And if you can't trust Norgard against Brentford, who he captained for 3, 4 seasons before he joined you, if you can't trust him against that team, when are you going to trust him? That's my opinion. Then we might as well admit we don't have a backup for Declan Rice and or Zubimendi. And then we're going to run them to the ground. And then come April and May, they're going to be too tired, and one of them is going to pull a hamstring, and then we're going to blame injuries. This year, I'm not interested in that. I'm sorry, I'm not. We've had we've had players who are good enough, who are available to be used, and if you're not using them, then that's on you. The coaching staff, Mikel, all these dudes. Like I'm a big, 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 big supporter of Mikel Arteta, and I want him to win at Arsenal. I'm not one of these fans who talks garbage and wants the manager, to not win or something like that, so that I can say I told you so. None of that. I don't subscribe to any of that. But we gotta call a spade a spade. Mikel, you gotta use your squad, brother. You just can't be sitting on your hands when you're watching your boys be bullied by Brentford, be bullied by we had energy to stand up to Sunderland at the weekend, and that took a lot after a very, very, very long semi-final against Chelsea. That that the emotion of getting through that semi-final was big, and so we were lucky enough to do the business against Sunderland, because physically that was a tough game. The Sunderland game was tough physically, and Brentford were on us. And they travel away to Newcastle, but they have less games on their legs than Arsenal. They've played just the Premier League, and they've played a couple of cup games here and there. Arsenal took the Champions League seriously, and so they were playing their best squad, and they, as you should, by the way. But I think they've played over 40 games already this season, Arsenal. And so you can't then roll out the same players when you're playing more games than the people you're facing in the Premier League. Because there's gone are the days in the Premier League now where if you're one of the top boys, top six, you can just show up. You have to win the physical contest first. Then you can win the football contest. That's what we did against Sunderland, because we had the energy for that. And Kai Havertz was very helpful for that, because he's a second target you can hit. The ball doesn't stick with Gyökeres. A few times he gets played through and the ball bounces off of him because his first touch is very, very loose. And so the team is having to defend. When you were in a good attacking position, all of a sudden you're having to defend. Like, the players have to figure this out, but I think the coach has to help them figure it out in terms of, like, you got to make sure in every game, the first thing you need to do is to show up with the right physical condition. Then you trust your talent to get you over the line. At the moment, we're trusting the talent to get us over the line with players who are sometimes not physically tip top. And that, for me, that is, you can't get away with that in this Premier League. Brentford today deserve all the praise because they outworked the Arsenal team that was on the pitch today. They outworked them. They were stronger. They were more zippy around the pitch. They had more crispness in their passing. And I'm sorry, Arsenal, that's my team. Okay. I bleed Arsenal. I'm always going to support my team. But we gotta call it a spade. We gotta call a spade a spade. And by the way, thank you for joining, you guys. Please, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe, share the content. I appreciate the support. Like, do all this stuff. I'm a small channel and I'm very responsive. If people comment or give suggestions on things or share ideas in the comment section, like, I'm always happy to respond. But my God, Arsenal, you have to you have the advantage still. All is not lost. 12 games to go. One of them is against Manchester City, so you still at least control that. If they win that, then, that could be a swing. If you get to that game with still a lead, they trim the lead. Or if you get to that game and it's tight, you can stretch your lead. But you're not going to get to that game in good condition if you're not using all of your players. You can't have passengers and be in 4 competitions. You either have to throw the competition, which in this case, the FA Cup. You either have to get yourself out of the FA Cup and have, less games as the season progresses, but nobody wants that. You can't do that. So the only thing you can do is to use your players. Anyway, I'm upset because of that. I'm not upset because of the effort from the players. I think the players did what they can because these are good kids. This group, I like this group. Even when sometimes, yes, the human stuff happens and they get nervous and they don't play well. I like this group. This is a really, really good bunch of kids. And the manager is a good one too. But he needs to really start believing in all of the players, not just by speaking about it, but by showing it, by voting players into games because we need them. And that's all. That's all I'm going to say about this one. The title race has been alive. The title race has never been gone. But the outside people, Gary Neville, all of the others, the big ones, you know who they are. They've been talking a lot of smack since October. This is Arsenal's year. It has to be, it's Arsenal's to lose. October, September, they've been talking like this already. And now, pressure on Arsenal because City won at Anfield to keep the gap at the top exactly as it was. There's going to be more dropped points by all teams. So I'm not losing my head, but I am hoping that my club wakes up. Come on, Arsenal. You got this. And thank you for supporting, guys. Please like, hype, subscribe, and all the beautiful stuff. And I'll talk to you on the next one. Come on, you Gunners. Cheers.